All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, brought to you by the Michigan Association of Counties and DTE Energy. Today, of course, joined by Deena, Bosworth, and Meghann Keit of the MAX staff. Just a reminder, you can type your questions in the chat throughout the broadcast, and we'll be sure to answer them probably at the end. So hope everyone had a good weekend, some nice temperatures. We were just talking, some of us have a little bit of case of the Mondays here. So, the rainy weather today, I don't know what it is. So hopefully we'll bring enough liveliness to your Monday with this highly informative podcast. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, state budget. We've been waiting for a state budget. We're hearing now there might be some movement on the state budget. There's a supplemental out there. Deena, why don't you kick us off a little bit on where we're at?
Well, as far as the supplemental goes, this is like, last year's money, the CARES Act money that they're trying to get out the door. It's about, the House passed a supplemental budget out of the Appropriations Committee of about $3.5 billion. We wrote about it in our legislative update last week, so take a look at that. It's got the details of it. That's, it's still only the House version. We don't have the Senate version. We don't have a negotiated supplemental with the governor yet. There was talk that they had a deal this week or last week, but then I think some communications problems happened and some deals fell through and there was a little bit of retaliation. So as it stands right now, there's no real deal on the supplemental, but the House does have a version of it. What I think is interesting in it is that they're trying to give people an incentive to get back to work. And I know, you talk to businesses around the state, you talk to even, county officials who are saying you guys can't hire anyone or keep anyone. So they've got a program in there. It's about $400 million to give $1,000 per person to anyone who goes from the unemployment system to full employment. I think it's their way of trying to get everybody back to normal as best as they can. They had $300 million in there for the local road and bridge fund, $100 million in nursing facility grants, which Meghann might want to touch on that. But that was $20 per Medicaid day increase to those facilities. Let's see what else. $25 million for PFAS remediation, $15 million of which can go to those areas that are dealing with municipal airports. High water infrastructure grants are still in there. What else have we got? I've got my list here. $19 million for federal Family First Prevention Services. $6.5 million for certified community behavioral health clinic demonstration programs. So it's a whole host of things. It's not necessarily all COVID related. There's other dollars in there, but they're, like I said, they're trying to get it out the door.
And that's just to remind everyone, that's the supplemental for the budget year we're in right now.
Yeah,
correct?
Fiscal year 21, yes.
All right, and then Meghann, what about, we got another budget, of course, we're working on that we're trying to get done here as soon as possible before the next fiscal year starts. Where are things with the next fiscal year budget?
Yeah, so essentially right now, the House and Senate subcommittees have started to move their individual budgets, and then those budgets go to the full Appropriations Committee before going to the floor and then swapping chambers. And so we've seen those initial kind of chair recommendations come out of committees. A couple highlights in there and things that we always look at, of course, is county revenue sharing. The House and the Senate both had an increase, different increase. Senate put 2% increase in there. The House recommended only a 1% increase. But both of those things are actually tied to using that increased dollar amount to your underfunded pension and OPEB liabilities. So MAC doesn't support tying up revenue sharing, particularly because we know that money is supposed to be as flexible as possible, not as much as we certainly should be getting from all of the money that we've saved the state over the years. So we put out a legislative update a couple weeks ago now. It has a whole list of your senators and your House of Representative members to talk specifically about those points. So go back and look at those. Or you guys, as county commissioners, administrators, you know all about revenue sharing, right? So call them up, encourage them to take those restrictions away, and really, I think, give us that full 2% increase. That being said, the House has a really interesting proposal where they funded a majority of their budgets in quarterly fragments. So typically you plan for a year, but the House moved a lot forward where it'd be every 3 months they'd be giving departments certain allocations of funding. And I think, you know, the House approach chairman really feels strongly about keeping the legislature involved in that process. I think the past year, with the governor having some unilateral approaches from the legislature's perspective on how she's been allocating money, responding to COVID, they're really trying to come forward and say that she needs to work with them. And so putting kind of this quarterly budget process in place would certainly have them hopefully talking a lot more. But the Senate didn't do that, so I think we're going to have a lot of back and forth between the House and the Senate and how to budget for this upcoming year. That being said, the timeline is, they're going to move it forward, and they have a statutory deadline to get a budget presented to the governor by June 30th. So, there's going to be some pressure to come to an agreement here and get something to the governor before they break for summer. A couple other things I'll just highlight really quick. I know a lot of our members have been concerned about indigent defense grant funding. Luckily, we did have the House and the Senate both commit the governor's recommendation of $149 million to those grants that counties get to implement those state standards. The House had a little change this year. They actually moved the budget, so it's fully funded, but it would be funded through the judiciary and not through the LARA budget, the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Agency. So that would take a statutory update if that were to occur. I think that we'll continue to have the conversation with the chairs and the House and the Senate, process and the administrative process behind getting those grants out. We've done a lot of work from the MAC standpoint to get the contracts and everything in place with LARA. So we can certainly do that again through a different branch of government under the judiciary, but it's going to take a little bit more effort. But at least it's fully funded. That's the positive thing there. And a couple other highlights, we had actually an increased investment from the Senate on local public health. So the governor recommended a $51.5 million budget there, and the Senate actually bumped that up $5 million. So that was exciting to see, because obviously our local public health has been on the front lines during this entire pandemic. So I think any further investment we can get there is really, really good to see. We got the $4 million for County Veteran Service Fund grants, so that would be fully funded. So all those counties get $50,000 base amount. So that would be really, really helpful. And again, we have all of this in our previous legislative update, so I don't have to go through every single line item, but I think there are some good wins. Obviously, revenue sharing, we're a little disappointed on, but I know, Deena's been talking to the chairs and trying to figure out what we can do to get those restrictions off of that money.
Yeah, I just want to add to that a little bit. We are also trying to get rid of the county incentive program. So we've talked to both subcommittee chairs and trying to work through, the leadership and the appropriations committee to get rid of your requirement for those annual reports to the Department of Treasury, your dashboards, and all of that makes you the hoops you have to jump through to get that other 20% of your revenue sharing. So we'll let you know the status on that. It's just, I think you guys are going to have enough reporting and paperwork that you have to deal with. Adding that to it is just kind of, or continuing with that fairly useless report to the department is, a good idea. I say fairly useless because every bit of that data, you guys, everything that is in those reports, the Department of Treasury can get out of everybody's F-65s that they have to do every year anyway. So there's no real point in sending that and jumping through those hoops. So hopefully we can be successful in getting rid of that too.
Great. And Meghann, just to clarify, so the MIDC budget, did they approve the dollar figure through the judiciary budget, or was it approved through the LARA budget?
In the Senate, it's approved through the LARA budget, which is where the statute houses that commission and the administration of those grants. And so the House, though, moved that full amount over to the judiciary budget. So in order to do that, though, and put that in the budget that way, they would have to amend the statute. So there would be budget implementation bills, and that would have to go through the appropriations process as well and get, signed by the governor. So we'll see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, seems like a little bit of a cart before the horse there, but what do I know? Moving along, Meghann, 4-year county commissioner terms, you've seen some movement on that last week.
Yeah, it was exciting. We had the Senate Local Government Committee meet, and we had Commissioner Jim Story, also Commissioner Joe Stevens. They testified in support of the bills, and along with Senator Ed McBroom and Senator Moss, who have sponsored the legislation. And so we had a unanimous support coming out of the committee, which was awesome. I think that hopefully that gives it good traction going onto the Senate floor. So we've made the ask to get an output on the Senate agenda. Usually a unanimous vote, means it's a good sign. So we're very, very excited, but please keep using our advocacy center. Please keep talking to your legislators, because it's all very helpful when you reiterate the fact that this is, we're one of 5 states that have it this way. I think Commissioner Story talks about it used to be 4-year terms, and then when we, saw the legislature make that change to 2 years, and not really any rhyme or reason behind that, but certainly I think we have a lot of traction now.
Well, and as we heard too, if you were tuned into our conference last week, the Speaker of the House, when asked about it, came out and said, the first thing he said, I would support that. So hopefully we can get movement out of the Senate. I think not that we were necessarily surprised by unanimously out of committee. We're definitely happy to see that, and I think that's a good sign for what's to come out of the Senate. Something else we constantly are dealing with are property tax exemptions. There's constant legislation to do that. Deena, you want to talk a little bit about the veterans property tax exemption issue that we've faced, and what's been introduced now to maybe address that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So several years ago, when the legislature decided it was a great idea to give 100% disabled veterans a full property tax exemption, it was kind of hard to fight against that. If you're talking about someone who's completely disabled, in your mind you conjure up a veteran that is served his country and is disabled and can't work, and really how do you deny something like that, right? Well, the problem was that the legislature decided that they were going to give them that benefit, but didn't reimburse local units of government for that lost property tax revenue. So we didn't have a say. It wasn't left up to the local units of government to determine, eligibility, or, if somebody, should have this exemption or they shouldn't. So for years, we've been struggling with, millions and millions and millions of dollars in SEV, taxable values going off our rolls. We can't tax them. We can't have that revenue. As it stands right now, there's some bills in the legislature that would require the state to reimburse us. And we're going to have a hearing next week in House Tax Policy on those bills. It's Representative Yarick and Representative LaFave. And their concept is a little bit different than what we've been working on. But basically they're saying, okay, state, you have to reimburse local units of government for their losses, but do it through how you get your PILT payments. So out of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, where you get your authorized PILT payments, they want that reimbursement to come through that mechanism. It's their way of forcing the state to do it without having to fight in the appropriations process all the time. And if the state does not make those payments, or the money's not in that account to make those payments, then the state is prevented from buying more land up across the state. So it's an interesting twist to it. I know in the Senate, we're also going to work on a package of bills that's going to talk about reimbursing local units of government for those losses, but we'll do it through a homestead property tax exemption. So the veteran would just file one time for the exemption, and then the local unit of government will apply to the state for reimbursement through that fund. So either way, we're working on it. It's not gone. I don't know how far these particular bills are going to go as far as pill payment, veterans property tax exemption reimbursement, but we're still going to be there, supporting the effort along the way.
Well, it's always good to have options, right? At least there's a couple options there, so we'll take that. Just a reminder too, if you do have questions, please, you can go ahead and type them in the chat and we'll be sure to answer them. Also last week, we heard from Matt Chase at our conference and NACO President Gary Moore, and they talked a lot about the federal guidance, and we are expecting federal guidance on those federal funds coming out this week. So hopefully we'll be able to pass that along to our members. And incidentally, if you are starting to put together general plans on how you are going to use those funds, please share those with us, because that's helpful for us to have, because we are constantly getting asked on how our members are going to be spending those funds. And I'm sure you're getting asked by a lot of people on how you're going to be spending those funds. So we want to be a resource to as many folks as possible. So any examples we have out there of what our members are doing are helpful. So that's kind of our topics right now. Derek, are there any questions?
There are no questions at this time.
Deena, Meghann, while we see if any questions pop up, is there anything else you wanted to address? Maybe your plans for this week, any house projects going on?
Oh, I always have projects going on, but I will comment on one thing that I know is really, really important to our members. You probably have been hearing from your local CMH directors, because the conversation about physical and mental health integration is really starting to percolate again, particularly out of the Senate Majority Leader's office under Shirkey, who's it's been a priority of his for a long time since he's on the legislature on this issue. And I know a lot of our members see it as a huge problem when it comes to privatization of those mental health functions and really maintaining that public oversight and accountability. So just want to let everyone know we're already engaged in the conversation. We've talked to the Senate Majority Leader's office. We talk very regularly with our partners at the Community Mental Health Association of Michigan. We'll keep everyone updated as more comes out of this. But if you're not already hearing about it and talking to legislators and talking to your CMH directors, you probably will be very soon.
Great, thanks, Meghann. All right. Any other topics?
No? Still no questions. Steve, I would just add for everyone, in case if they're wondering, we will be posting the presentations and the video recordings from the legislative conference last week. That video is still being processed, so bear with us, but we're hoping to have that brought online maybe by the end of the week.
Great.
And okay, now here comes some questions.
Great.
Are any county administrators and county boards supporting an enduring gifts fund? This allows for fundraising for the county. Is anyone doing this, or do you know of a county who is actively involved with this? And this is Ben Larson up in Houghton County.
I have not heard of it being done before. Deena, Meghann, I don't know if you've heard of it being done before.
No, and I know, Ben, you were going to ask your auditor if this was something that was acceptable. So hopefully you got an answer on that. Have not reached out to other counties or administrators, but I think it's an interesting concept. I know different administrators and counties have, raised funds for some particular projects when they've reached out to the business community, but I don't know for general fund application.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I know of specific projects as well, but I don't know about just a general fund to sit there. So that's an interesting one we can look into more. Any other questions, Derek?
Sure are. Michael Andrews, any updates, discussions on solid waste legislation?
Well, the solid waste legislation has passed the House and now it's over in the Senate. It's going to be, I think, a while before they take it up. That's my guess if I had a crystal ball. The reason I say that is because it's a very dense package of bills and it takes quite a while to get through it. The House had spent last fall going through all of those bills and in the summer and several weeks of testimony, I'm sorry, the spring, and several weeks of testimony this spring on it. They had the education. Now it's over in the Senate, and I think it's going to take a while for the Senate to get up to speed before they move it.
Okay, next one for Meghann, Marlene Bromer. Meghann, can you kind of give a bit of a more 30,000 foot overview of the CMH issue?
Yeah, so we haven't seen, there's no legislation on it yet, but oh, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to double check. I thought I was on mute, but I'm not, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. But really it goes back to really the Section 298 process from a couple of years ago, and we're really seeing a conversation start again about shifting the financing for Medicaid through the private Medicaid health plans versus the public prepaid and patient health system with our CMH that we have set up right now, and that CMH structure really being rooted in local control where you have those CMH boards determined by the county boards. That would likely, under some type of plan that sends it to those private Medicaid health plans, would be really taken away. And so our focus is really trying to talk about the positives and the things that are working really well and the investments that we've made to really benefit the system from that local control standpoint, and keep that public accountability and public governance structure. So, you know, we'll continue to have a conversation about it, and I think there'll be more to come. And like I said, there's not been bills introduced about it yet, but it's definitely a conversation that's kind of percolating again.
Yeah, I remember that when that conversation started. That was back, well, probably about what, 4 years ago now? They first started, probably longer than that now.
Longer, like 6 or 7.
Yeah. But
Okay.
it hasn't seemed to go away. Go ahead, Derek. Sorry.
Yep. So, next question also for Meghann. Jim's story over in Allegan County, believe referencing House Bill 4164, is curious to know who is pushing the legislation and why.
So Representative Berman, he's the bill sponsor, and the oversight chair, Representative Steve Johnson, have really been kind of leading that charge. I think from their perspective, it's, you know, trying to be more transparent and accessible through our courts has been a long conversation, and they want to see this get done as soon as possible. And in the bill, it'd have it done by January 1st, 2023. Obviously, with term limits, legislators want to put dates in there to see it done before they're term limited. If you're asking if there's any like stakeholders that support it or any group that came out and said they want to get this done, that's yet to be seen. There's not been one stakeholder on record supporting the bill. It's only really been opposition. So it's really been driven by, you know, the bill sponsor, I think, at this point.
Okay, we're caught up again on questions.
All right. Well, good. I think we'll wrap things up. Let everyone get back to their Mondays. Thanks, Deena. Thanks, Meghann, for your update. Derek, thanks for the questions. Everyone, have a great week, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Okay.